But I've always been interested in the following question, and I very much think that my entire life's work has been on the pursuit of answering this question. That why is it that the same life event can happen to two different people, but for one person that it happens to, it becomes the thing that puts them in a downward spiral of perhaps drugs, alcohol, violence, everything that's, wrong in the book. Yet the very same exact life event can happen to another person, and this is what becomes the catalyst for them becoming a TED Talk, 30 years later or 40 years later. So I've always been fascinated, and I picked up a few clues along the way. But this question became very relevant to me in first year university. So just to give you some background, I was that kid that people didn't like because I always got an A, no matter how hard I tried not to get an A. If I didn't study, it was an 80, and if I actually did study, it was a 90. So academics was, I didn't get the girls, I wasn't the cool kid, I was bullied, all of that, but academics I was very, very strong and confident in. I was coding when I was 9 years old, for example. Anyways, come first year university, the most unexpected, for someone with my history, thing happened. And that was, I got so fearful around writing exams that I effectively, it was actual pain in my stomach. I can almost recall it, almost. And I remember I would be very creative. I'd go get a doctor's note from a walk-in, and of course I had the whole system. I knew, well, I couldn't go to him because I already went to him last test, right? So I had a whole circuit, but of course when it came to writing the deferred test, it was the same problem over again. Now, I didn't actually go to the school counselor or go to a doctor or anything about that, which in hindsight, I think that was a very good thing, because the last thing I wanted was to be given the identity or told that I have an anxiety disorder. But having worked in recent years with the mental health side of things in the medical community, that's probably what they would have given me, an anxiety disorder. It was that bad, that debilitating, that I effectively tried by going to a different university. Same thing happened. I went from U of T over to Ryerson, dropped out of Ryerson. I went to Sheridan, maybe the college route, and effectively dropped out of school altogether, right? And with the sort of family that I had, being the youngest, and all, my brothers and sisters being very, academically high achieving, this was a very interesting route. So you can begin to imagine, as hypnotists, as all the wonderful work that you guys are doing, what kind of a self-dialogue and limiting beliefs I had picked up because of that. So much of my self-worth and value was tied to my academics. That was the one thing that I had, going very good for me. Started working because what else am I going to do? And I ended up in the one industry in which they don't really care about your degree. All they care about is, can you perform? Which is, if you've guessed it, sales. Now, even in sales, right, I didn't do too well, because all of that kept coming back to me, right? The self-dialogue, the belief statements, and effectively I remember every quarter in the director's office having a chat, like, Mohammed, you really got to step this up. You're a good kid, but you got to perform, otherwise we're going to have no choice to let you go. And they like me, so I think that, kind of kept me longer than I should have. I'm 37 now, I discovered NLP at the age of 23, which is around this time. And it started out with some weekend workshops, really, really changed my outlook on life. But I formally got trained in 2009. And that training, just to kind of put it in perspective, because I see a lot of folks, putting weekend-long NLP practitioner trainings, and well, now you can buy yourself a practitioner training certificate off of some website made in India, right? I can joke, it's my cousin, relax. But no, seriously, right? So my NLP training was actually once a week for 20 months, every week for a period of 20 months. And then I did his master practitioner, and that was another 20 full-time days. And then I sat in on his class as a resource 2 more times of 20 more days, so another 40 days. And then I trained for the guy for 2 years. So I lived and breathed NLP for quite a bit. And it was my NLP trainer that actually, and he was trained by Robert Dills, who put me in touch with, I think, a bit of a name here, Mike Mandel, right? So he put me in touch with Mike Mandel, and Mike trained me in everything there is to know about hypnosis and unconscious. So where my NLP trainer, Hugh, gave me perhaps the tools of how to control, my language and the reality that I've been creating for myself, which is really the stories that I've been telling myself, Mike really helped me unlock the power of my unconscious, my subconscious mind. So I kind of want to give that perspective to you, because when we're talking about transformation, I know a bit or two about that. This talk, The Anatomy of Change, so I noticed the description of the talk wasn't necessarily published, so I'm kind of curious to know what it is that you think you stumbled into. I'm not teaching a protocol or a process or anything like that. I'm not going to do a demo unless you want to catch me outside and I'll stick your hand to your forehead because, hey, why not, right? But this conversation really comes from a small part of a training that I actually do, in which I just train people in learning the different processes and protocols that come from NLP. Stuff like 6-step reframe, re-imprinting, dock on the bay, phobia cure, all of that sort of stuff. But what I actually get them to understand is, because I'll have many conversations with other people and they'll talk that, hey, Mohammed, I have a client that's coming, right? And they're coming for this reason or such and such reason. Which process should I run? Which protocol should I run? Or, is there a good script that you can recommend? And I always find myself saying, okay, first of all, let's take a step back and maybe even really understand the scenario here. Because the client that's coming to see you is another human being. And that really is your protocol and your process. If we ask the question, if you've already made up our mind, what is the protocol we're supposed to run or the process that we're supposed to run, kind of miss the point. And rather, it's to really understand, I call it anatomy of change because one is the name of my workshop, so hey, sexy marketing, right? But really is to understand that there is a certain structure that if we can lead our clients through, they will follow you in their change work. And that's what I'm here to share. I see a lot of people, which is good, nodding their head because you understand this, that really, if you know what you're doing and you do good work, truly any protocol, any process will do the job. But it's really about empowering your client. And so what I'm about to share with you is definitely not the way. I would never say that, because there's so much talent in this room right now that each and every one of you have. Rather, I would like to offer perhaps a way, in my way, of how I currently, from a structure perspective, from an anatomy perspective, how I kind of run my sessions, and perhaps that would be something you might find beneficial. So first things first, ultimately, I want to know two bits of information. I want to know where they are. Like, can you imagine a buddy of mine or a friend of yours gives you a call and says, hey, Mohammed, meet me there at 5 o'clock. And bye, hangs up the phone. Like, what am I supposed to do with that information? I have no idea where there is. What is it that they actually want, where they're supposed to meet me? And before, any GPS, before I know exactly where I'm going, I want to know where I currently am too. So those are the two things that I'm effectively doing in that first bit of my session. My sessions tend to sometimes go very long. I mean, normally I knock them out in about a couple hours, but the longest I've ever been is 5 hours, because for me, the work is done when the work is done, right? So I have a bit of a conversation. I'm asking these sort of these questions, where they currently are and where they want to go. So when I ask them where they are, this is the opportunity that I give my clients to sort of tell me about their problem. And you can always tell, I was joking with Alan, you can always tell if someone's been to therapy for many, many years, because they'll assume the physiology of, telling their story, and they know exactly, they've got it perfectly scripted, they know all the buzzwords, they know all the keywords, right? And the last thing I want to do, of course, is have them go through the shit that they're looking to, that they're looking to release, but rather, while I'm listening to the content, what I'm really looking for is the context. in which their problem exists. Because I understand that their problem is something that they're doing. It's not something that they have. And my job also is to have them realize that themselves. Because when they can realize that they are actually doing this, maybe not, they don't wake up in the morning and be like, gee whiz, I can't wait to have depression today. But there definitely is a process, a recipe that their unconscious is following, and they're doing it. That in and of itself usually is the biggest game changer that they need. And one of the best questions that I got from NLP is, if someone comes to me, regardless of what the problem is, whether it's depression or trauma or anxiety or lack of confidence, I ask them, teach me how you do that. And I'm looking for the ins and outs, the beliefs, where it exists, where it doesn't exist, what are the conditions and the permissions in which that problem exists in. And as they're teaching me how to do that, it kind of presupposes that they're also becoming aware that they are following a recipe, and that's all it is. And then I simply ask them, what do you want? Now, if you guys have been, I'm looking at the room, a lot of senior people here in terms of you've been doing this for a while, you'll ask your clients, isn't it funny, you ask your clients, what do you want? They'll tell you all the things they don't want. Right? To which, a line I stole from Mike is, well, you don't go to a grocery store with a list of all the things that you don't want to buy. Right? So be clear, and it's an opportunity for the client to be very clear of what it is that they want. And I'll ask them and I'll encourage them, well, tell me, how will you know that you're doing this, that you've got this? What would it look like, sound like, feel like? Elicit the senses, make it real. Submodality work, if you're familiar with NLP models already. But I understand that as they're describing, and part of their neurology is lighting up and it's already accessing the behavior that they want. And if I can get them even at that point to say congruently, again, most of my work is already done. And then so we have this conversation. I've understood now, and I've made them, a bit aware now of how it is that they're creating their problems and exactly where they want to go and how they'll know that they're doing their desired, goal, their desired state. I then will teach them something very, very simple and powerful, effectively leading to a concept which I'm going to talk about, which I feel personally is probably the most important thing that we can do for our clients, which is taking personal responsibility. So I teach them about state control. So I'll say something like, hey, can I have a volunteer, and truly, can I have a volunteer, someone come up on stage? I want to show you a quick demo. Come on, someone come up. Come on down, Hannah, come up. I think you got your hand up first. So I'll say something like, hey, you want to see a really cool NLP trick? Or a mind hack, or depending who I'm, working with. You want to see something really cool?
Sure.
All right, awesome. Which one of these dots represents a really happy, giddy type? There we go. Oh, she's got it. Ericksonian purple. Do you know what this is?
No.
What does it look like? Anyone want to guess what this is? Right? So, yeah, so IKEA actually sells these. IKEA sells these as placemats, and I actually did a training for IKEA. And they're like, aren't those our placemats? I'm like, no. These are magical state shift teleportation devices. And personally, if you ask me, $299 is a steal for what you guys charge for this. So this is how you use this device here. I'm going to place it right, just so we don't, stay safe. Stand over here. And stand behind the dot right over here. Okay, perfect. So go ahead and close your eyes and think of that memory, an experience from your younger self. When I say younger self, I mean a second ago you were younger, in which you had that joy, that happiness, that giddiness, that feeling that's just absolutely wonderful that you want to experience now. Let me know when you've got a specific moment in history. You let me know with a nod. There you go. You got it? Perfect. And you know the age of this girl? How old she was? You don't have to share it. I'm just asking. Yeah, okay. The only reason I asked that is not because I need to know. I just want to make sure she actually picked a moment in history rather than just, conceptualizing it. All right, so I want you to imagine now that standing on that dot in front of you is that younger you in that experience, and she is doing happiness. There we go. Notice what the world looks like through the eyes of happiness. Notice the colors, the shapes. Notice the sounds and what the ears of happiness hear, the pitch and tone and the volume. Notice what you might say to yourself, if anything at all, when you're happy now. And notice as you see the pictures and hear the sounds, notice how you feel. And notice where that feeling lives. Perhaps it's a feeling that's all over, or perhaps it lives in a particular spot. But you know what I'm talking about, don't you? And so as you see the pictures, hear the sounds, and feel the feelings, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the most and 0 being not at all, how happy are you now?
10.
10, sweet. Here's the interesting thing. I want you to notice what happens when you take that feeling that's already a 10 out of 10 and take a deep breath of it. That's right. You can dial it up even higher. It's like 100 out of 10, even though it doesn't make any sense, right? Go ahead again. And notice what happens when you make the pictures brighter, louder. You can even raise it more, can't you? So Hannah, I want you to take all the learnings from this small experience, from this demo, about the power of your unconscious, about the power that you have to consciously simply go into a moment of time and remember happiness and how that manifests in your body now. So take all of the learnings, and when you've got it, and when you know, open your eyes, take as much time as you need, but only when your body tells you that you've got all the lessons learned. You can open your eyes anytime. Hi.
Hi.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now your job is just to be curious. I love curiosity. Curiosity is a state of openness, wonder, expectations, like what's going to happen next. So be curious that in the days and weeks and months to come, how easy it is for you to generate happiness. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll set this aside if you want to take that home. I've got these executives in offices across, the GTA with these dots like on their walls. So I'll show them this demo and I'll ask them and we'll talk about it. Like, what was that like? It was really, really interesting, right? How quickly I was able to go. And if you're familiar with NLP, and this is not an NLP training, not this talk anyways, you'll know that by changing the submodalities, by changing how they perceive that experience, that they can really have that control. And what they're learning at the unconscious level is that they have control, which is very important. Because it reminds me of a time in which I helped a client. She was about 32, 33 when I actually saw her. And when she was 7 years old, she was involved in a car accident. And she was sitting in the back seat, her parents were up at front, and the collision killed both her parents. And so she had no one. The closest relative that she had lived all the way in Ottawa, an aunt. And when news made it about the parents' death and that she needed to be with someone, the aunt, for whatever reason, and we all know behind every behavior there's a positive intention, felt that it was too much for her, given what's going on in her life, and also rejected her niece. And so, of course, she found herself in a foster family, and she went from one family to another, kind of stuck in the system, as they say. And it wasn't until I think 22, 23 that she actually found stability for the very first time. And so I'll ask my client as I tell this story, well, let me ask you guys, how does it make you feel? Yeah. Now, of course, the fact that I completely made up this story is besides the point. This is usually where I get a punch. I had to get really good at blocking punches in my work. But it demonstrates a very powerful message that all I have done is I know the recipe, the how-to get you happy, to get you sad. And actually, through this experience, you've already learned the how-to change your emotional state, haven't you? Because truly, when we think of things, and those of us, we're familiar with the way memory works, we are recreating. Just because we know how to do something doesn't mean that's who we are. People aren't their emotions. And so many folks find themselves in my office and they have been given this life sentence. And I'll tell them, listen, look, you don't have depression. Like I have my hand, this is attached to me, and this is a part of me, and everything goes according to plan, it'll remain attached to me. But this, it's not, like, again, even this is something that's a part of me, but it's not who I am as a whole. Just because I know how to ride a bike doesn't mean that I'm always riding a bike. But if I needed to, I can ride a bike. And so these emotions, these states, let's understand how. Because if I want to be depressed, and you've already taught me how to be depressed, well, I got to go stay inside, I got to cut myself off, I got to do this, I got to think of all the things, I got to ask myself why questions. Why my life sucks so much? Well, this is why your life sucks, because, we're gonna reinforce all of that. And so to really understand that what I'm getting them to really appreciate is this very simple and powerful equation. Cause and effect. And effectively said that there's a cause, and the subsequent consequential thing that happens because of the cause is the effect. And most people, I find, tend to live on the effect side of the equation. Now, I know they're on the effect side of the equation, and they're on the effect side of the equation, because in their language, they'll say stuff like, well, this person did that to me, right? It's his fault, it's her fault. Until this other thing happens, then I'm going to be happy. And I don't say this to be harsh or to be mean, but, and again, I keep going to you just because that was such an engaging and stimulating conversation that Alan and I had, that my job, as far as what I do, isn't there to offer social or emotional support. I'm the most, if you guys get to know me, I'm the most loving guy, right? I'm all about teaching gratitude and love. I'm a heart math trainer, right? But I work with people, you come to me because, and your clients come to you because they want change. That's what they're after. And so they need to understand that they actually have the power to move over to the cause side of the equation. And when they're in the cause side of the equation, that's where their freedom is. Because that's when they understand, if someone says to me, oh, so-and-so always makes me angry. I'm like, wow, that's amazing, right? And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, I just want to know, because go ahead, close your eyes. And they close their eyes, and I say, take a deep breath, and they'll take a deep breath. And I'll ask them, who did that? Did you do that, or did I do that? Did I go into your brain and I don't even know how that would work, but trigger your brain to close your eyes and take a deep breath? No, you listened to me. You allowed what I asked, but you're the one that did that, isn't it? And so if you're telling me that they always make me angry, that's quite fascinating. But I think what you're really trying to say here is that when this other person does the behavior, whatever it is that they do, well, then I go internally and I run my anger program, or my ability or my knowledge of how to do anger. And this is, of course, happening unconsciously, and that's what we're here to break. But I want you to understand that really we have to take personal responsibility. A lot of the times I like to tell people that my job is to reintroduce choice into people's lives because they think they don't have choice. I also like to tell people my job is not as a hypnotist, not to hypnotize anyone, it's to dehypnotize us from all the hypnosis that the world has done, that these clever marketing companies that have studied emotional psychology inside and out, that our parents have done, all of that, with good intentions, of course. I also like to tell people my job is to make people cry. Because when there's that somatic release, they're good. So if you understand this principle, and we teach this to our clients, that I really do believe is the most important thing that they need to understand. And when they can take that personal responsibility and they understand that they're the ones in control, truly, and it's good to know lots of protocols, and it's good to have lots of tools, be well trained, be good at your craft. But truly, it doesn't matter what you do at that point. They've already done the work. I like to tell them, NLP didn't change my life. I changed my life. I did new behaviors. I learned new strategies. I learned how to public speak. I learned how to manage my money. I took business trainings from actual people who ran businesses, right? Not from, anyways, won't have that conversation. But I give them that power and that control back. Really, they're the ones doing the heavy lifting anyways. The other thing I wanted to share with you guys here, and I'm sure you're already aware, but a lot of the times, this is an interesting distinction because it's easy to confuse. And I've actually made this mistake myself in my own journey, which of course, I'm always on my journey. I'm always learning new things and making myself better. Is understanding that there is a difference between state and goal. What do I mean by this? I ask, what do you want? And they'll be like, I just want to be happy. Okay, well, what's your goal? That is my goal. I want to be happy. Happiness is not a state. This is not a goal. Happiness is a state. And we've already demonstrated that you can change your state in an instant. We're going to do that right now, right? My nephews and nieces, they start acting up. I just get them to laugh about, someone's dirty diaper. Always gets them giggling. Like, oh, great, we're happy now. So we can change our state in an instant. Goals are more bigger. They're tangible. They're tied to, actual things that you can touch and feel. And that's important because if clients come to me and I'll ask them, what do they want? And they give me a state, well, I, in that session, help them actually identify a goal because what they're asking for really, what they're telling me, when they say, I want happiness, what they're really telling me is I want a different sort of life. And so then I elicit, well, what does that new life look like? What are you doing? How does that look like? What are you wearing? All of those details, And the more they can verbalize and actualize that new life, guess what? The work has already started. It can be really clever if I wanted to and ask them, well, what did this person have to do in order to get that? And now I've got a complete blueprint of exactly the next things they need to do for the next 1, 2, 5, 50 years, right? But it's important for them to also understand that state is something they can change. And also to have goals. Lots of people are walking around with no goals at all, right? Not real goals anyways, and we need to take control. I listen to Brendan Burchard a lot. I really like him if you've heard his name. And he has this thing, people come up and be like, hey, can you rewire my brain? We get that a lot as hypnotists. Can you rewire me? One of the things I really appreciate that he says is, hold on a second. First of all, rewire, I don't think most of us have ever actually taken the opportunity to wire ourselves to begin with. Right? Most of us haven't taken the conscious, maturity to decide what it is that we want to make out of our lives and what we want our lives to be about. Right? We just kind of let society, we just joined the stream in a way. So, lots of amazing work and opportunities that you guys have and that you guys do with your clients because you're effectively giving them that control and that power. And that's effectively, what we're doing. We're helping humanity. So I'll then tell my clients leading to the actual change work, the process, the protocol, is I'll say, listen, I don't have a time machine. I wish I did. It'll make my work a lot easier. But we can't change history. But the thing that we can change, and we do change, is our association and our relationship with history. That's what we do, right? Whereas you've always walked down this path, what the work we're going to do now is we're going to take that life event, no matter what it is. It's like, the other day if I'm walking in the mall and someone bumps into me, I might be angry, I might be pissed off, I might even call him a jerk or an asshole. Right? I was like, aren't you blind? Maybe I get angry, not really my personality. But that anger is going to last, a minute, 5 minutes at most? If you remind me 2 weeks later, hey, remember that guy who bumped into you in the mall and totally you dropped your bag and everything? I'm like, oh yeah, that jerk. But the emotional charge is gone. And I don't mean to, limit or take your story and make it small or anything, but that really is the goal, that even the horrible, nasty things that never should have happened to you to begin with. Like, I'm with you, that never should have happened. But really, the goal is to get it so it's just like, you remember it, but the emotional charge is gone. And when that happens, every time you walk down that new path now, we have changed the relationship in the associations. And that's really the structure that I follow. I get them, I teach them. I teach them how their brain works. And I teach them how to take back the power and the control for themselves, and that they are the ones, because that's ultimately what it is. In my heart math training I was saying that, it's not about taking some crappy situation that's happening in my life and then run a technique so I'm like, oh yay, thank you. I love my crappy situation. That's not transformation. That's not the name of the game. The point of practicing self-regulation, which is what I was talking about earlier, is so that we can get ourselves to an emotional composed state, to an emotional matured space, where now we can take a look at this issue that's bothering us and actually be in a capacity to do something about it. We still have to address our issues, right? And that's all it is, and that's what we're doing with our clients. We're saying that, listen, what you're doing isn't working, so we already established that, but we need to address these things that need to be addressed. Let's first empower ourselves. And then the rest. And I think you guys are familiar and you have your own toolkit and you have your own ways of doing, the actual work in the process, right? As I said, the protocol doesn't really matter. If you've gotten them to accept personal responsibility, if you've gotten them to understand that they need to be on the cause side of the effect, that they need to be in control, and how to actually do that, you got them to understand that state can totally change in an instant, and that we need to work on goals and aspirations, and then chase that. The protocol doesn't matter. Your client is the protocol. Be with them 100%. You're calibrating them, you're watching them, just really, really be in touch and be in tune with them. I do not understand, and I know there's no one in the room here, but I do not understand where the client is facing this way and the practitioner is looking completely the other way. It's like, you're talking to a clipboard here. And of course, make sure to future pace your work. I'm sure we all know this, but I'm just going to put it there because I want to make sure that we're all doing good work. And of course, I'm learning from you guys here. The times that they feel amazing in your office and in my office, but then they go out into the real world and everything falls apart, is because we didn't future pace. And future pace is, simply put, is get them to imagine themselves in a place where they might have reacted the old way, but notice what happens instead now, right? And when they can do that, they're seeing themselves so much, and even though it's imagination, it almost feels like memory when they start doing it for the first time. The second thing that I do is I actually teach them and empower them with tools that they can run themselves. My goal always, I say to them, listen, I have the worst business model out there. My goal is, hopefully, if I do my job right, never to see you again, right? So if I either have to see you twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, my goal is to get you out of here, get you enjoying your life, and just keep on going. And that if you do see me, it's because you have hit another milestone. And finally, and I'll open up for questions or anything. I can show you guys card tricks if you want. But to borrow from Carl Jung here, he has this line, perception is projection. And the way I want to introduce this for our work is understand that it is imperative, critical, that when your clients come and work with you, that you see them as they already have gotten better. That you have so much belief in their possibility, in their success, that it's as if you actually do have a time machine and you went into the future and you saw how amazing and successful they were, and you know, because it's beyond belief, it's knowing that they're going to be better. When you hold and you work with that sort of an intention, that sort of an energy, and you hold that space for them, I promise you, and I don't make a lot of promises, but I promise you, if that's the space that you hold with that level of intention, your client will have no choice but to follow you in their change work. So remember that. That's all I got.
Good job.
Thank you. Any questions or anything?